Now, the city's obsessed. Fans are chanting his name before games. His jersey is everywhere in the stands. News outlets run live coverage of his warm-ups. And it's not just the public. Inside the organization, things are shifting. Coaches are getting asked daily. Reporters chase every hint. Teammates are speaking out. He's mature beyond his years. He's handling everything like a vet. He's different. But that's created a problem. Joe Flacco is still the starting quarterback, a Super Bowl winner, a proven veteran. On paper, he's the logical choice. Stfansky says the team is sticking with what works. But what happens when what's working isn't what's inspiring? Because let's make one thing clear. Shedeur hasn't just sparked hype, he's started a movement. And now, the Browns are stuck. Hold him back and face the wrath of a fan base desperate for change. Start him too soon and risk crashing a young career before it has time to develop properly. This isn't about one game. It's about momentum, identity, and timing. The Browns haven't had a quarterback with this much fan devotion since their return to the NFL. And they know this decision could define everything. So how did we get here? How did a rookie with no starts become the center of Cleveland's future plans? And what happens if the Browns are too late or too careful to let him take over? This is the story of Shedeur Sanders and how a fifth-round pick could reshape an entire franchise before ever being named QB1. Before chants of "We want Shedeur" echoed through Cleveland stadiums, before the headlines and the jersey sales. Shedeur Sanders was just another rookie trying to stay afloat in one of the league's most unforgiving roles, the backup quarterback. But even early on, something felt different. He wasn't flashy in interviews. He wasn't showing off in drills. He was just locked in, head down, studying film, arriving early, asking questions the way seasoned vets do. Coaches noticed, so did teammates. But no one outside the building was paying attention until one moment flipped everything on its head. Green Bay, preseason. One sideline celebration, a touchdown drive, a camera cut, and all of a sudden, Sanders was going viral. It wasn't just the throw, it was the swagger, the calm, the confidence, and most of all, the way his teammates responded to him. From that moment on, things changed. Fans started digging deeper. Clips from Colorado resurfaced. People saw what Dion had been talking about for years. Shedeur wasn't just good. He was built for this. Built for attention. Built for pressure. Built for moments without flinching. Reporters began lining up for practice just to see if he'd get reps with the starters. When he did, social media lit up in real time. Every throw was clipped, labeled, and analyzed within minutes. And still, Shedeur remained quiet, focused. Every day, same schedule, same effort, same calm control. Inside the locker room, momentum was building. Starters praised his poise. Linemen appreciated his preparation. Even veterans, who normally take time to warm up to rookies, were singing his praises. The Browns had seen countless quarterbacks come and go, most louder, most flashier, most failed. But Shedeur was patient in a way those guys weren't. He didn't demand the spotlight. It found him. And that's when the real pressure started. Not on Shedeur, but on the organization. Because it wasn't just fans getting louder, it was the entire league watching. NFL insiders started citing him as the most intriguing rookie situation in the league. Executives across both conferences began whispering, "Is Cleveland sitting on something real here?" The question wasn't just, "Is Shedeur ready for the NFL?" It became, "Is Cleveland ready for Shedeur?" And while media narratives exploded and public pressure reached new heights, Sanders just kept showing up. Calm, prepared, and waiting. But the Browns couldn't keep waiting forever because the next chapter would force them to make a decision. the kind that changes everything. By week 4, practice in Cleveland didn't feel like practice anymore. It felt like a media circus. What should have been routine game preparation turned into a full-blown spectacle. Reporters packed the sidelines, cameras zoomed in on every throw, and most of them weren't watching Joe Flacco. The name on every notepad was Shedeur Sanders, and he wasn't even starting. The Browns' public relations team noticed the shift immediately. For the first time all season, they tightened media access. Certain drills became off-limits. Player interviews were suddenly more controlled, and no one was supposed to talk too much, especially about the rookie quarterback everyone was actually there to see. But inside the locker room, Sanders wasn't fazed. While the buzz outside rose to a fever pitch, Shedeur kept his schedule the same. Early to meetings, extra film sessions, constant one-on-ones with quarterback coach Bill Musgrave. He wasn't begging for more reps. He was preparing as if he had them already. Veterans took notice. Left tackle Joel Bitonio, one of the team's most respected voices, told reporters, "He's not letting the attention change who he is. He's still putting in the work, still supporting Joe, still focused on the team." That's what leaders look like. Center Ethan Posick echoed the sentiment. "It feels like he's been in the league for 10 years. The lights, the noise, the pressure, he doesn't blink." Meanwhile, tension within the building was growing. Internally, Sanders was getting more practice reps. Coaches were evaluating, debating, but publicly, Kevin Stfansky stayed firm. Shedeur was still developing. Joe Flacco was still the guy. But not everyone was so sure. Owner Jimmy Haslam had reportedly been attending more practices, personally observing how things played out. NFL insiders began breaking stories about private discussions inside the Browns front office. Social media speculation exploded. Every edited clip, every sideline moment was under a microscope. And here's where the pressure became impossible to contain. What started as a quarterback debate had morphed into something bigger. This wasn't just about talent. It was about the future, the city, the culture. On one side, you had the veteran, a safe choice, a steady hand, a known quantity. On the other, a rookie sparking energy the Browns hadn't felt in decades. Something had to give. The locker room sensed change. The fans were demanding it. The front office was listening. And the league? Watching every second like it was a season finale. Because up next was the decision that could shape Cleveland's identity for years to come. By Thursday of game week, the pressure cooker inside the Browns facility had reached full boil. Officially, nothing changed. Joe Flacco remained the starter. But behind closed doors, the energy was shifting. More reps were quietly going to Shedeur. Coaches were spending more time watching him on film. Meeting rooms buzzed with the quiet, loaded question, "Is he ready?" And over it all loomed one uncomfortable truth. The clock was ticking. The fan base wasn't just supporting Sanders anymore, they were demanding him. Every practice throw had thousands of eyes on it. Every whisper from the locker room made the rounds on Reddit, Twitter, even national talk shows. This wasn't your usual rookie noise. It was a movement, building by the hour. Inside the ownership suite, that movement wasn't being ignored. Sources say owner Jimmy Haslam made multiple appearances at practices that week, highly unusual during a regular season stretch. He wasn't just present, he was watching closely, evaluating for himself, and speaking privately with front office members and coaching staff. For a franchise striving for both stability and excitement, Shedeur represented the rare chance to check both boxes. But there was risk, big risk. Starting him now would break from plan. He was supposed to sit, develop, learn at a controlled pace. That's what the team had committed to. Rushing a young quarterback, especially one with a name already bigger than his resume, could backfire fast. Yet sitting him too long, that had consequences too, because this wasn't just about what happened in practice. It was about momentum, and Cleveland had it, thanks to Shedeur. Internally, coaches debated two timelines: protect the rookie and ride the veteran, or ride the wave and figure it out on the fly. General managers around the league were reportedly fascinated. They knew the Browns faced a nearly impossible decision: take the leap and risk the investment, or play it safe and lose the spark. One anonymous AFC executive put it bluntly: they're in a no-win situation. Start him and you gamble the future. Sit him and you might lose your locker room and your city. Another NFC GM, less cautious, said, when the fans, the locker room, and the energy are all pointing in the same direction, sometimes that tells you everything. And with kickoff approaching, Cleveland waited for one answer. Would the Browns finally embrace the energy surrounding Shedeur Sanders? Or would they bury it under the weight of caution and old habits? The tension reached its peak on Friday at a press conference watched across the country. What head coach Kevin Stfansky said next left everyone stunned. By Friday morning, the Browns' usual weekly press conference wasn't just a local media event. It was national news. Kevin Stfansky stood at the podium, visibly worn by the non-stop pressure. A coach known for his calm demeanor, now looking like a man stuck between two realities. For 5 straight days, he'd answered the same question: is Shedeur Sanders starting? And no matter how many times he deflected, the room wasn't letting it go. This time, he finally gave a definitive answer. Joe Flacco gives us the best opportunity to win on Sunday. He's our starting quarterback. The words were simple, straightforward, but the reaction? Instant chaos. Online, fans exploded. The reply sections filled with fire emojis, face palms, and accusations of playing scared. Reporters immediately pushed back. Why now? Why stick with a veteran when a rookie had clearly become the heart of the team? Why snuff out the spark that had energized not only the fan base, but the locker room? To many, it felt tone-deaf, flat, like Stfansky and the staff were missing something that was obvious to everyone else. Momentum was on Sanders' side, but Stfansky wasn't done. In a follow-up response, he struck a very different tone, less corporate, more reflective. I want to be clear, Shedeur has exceeded every expectation. His leadership, his poise, his preparation, it's real. We're fortunate to have him, and we're committed to developing him the right way. This isn't a benching, it's a process. In that single comment, something changed. Stfansky wasn't denying Shedeur's impact anymore. He was acknowledging it, even respecting it, while still trying to maintain control of the narrative. It was a public balancing act. Give credit to the rookie without surrendering authority as head coach. But fans weren't having it. To them, this wasn't development. It was hesitation, fear of the unknown. And in a city that's lived through 2 decades of false hope, playing it safe now felt like more of the same. Local media hammered the point all weekend. Talk radio shows called it the biggest missed opportunity of the season. Even national analysts weighed in, calling the move overcautious and out of touch with what's happening on the ground. But inside the facility, one message was becoming clearer by the day. Shedeur Sanders wasn't just next in line. He was the future. The only question? How long could they keep him on the sideline? Because when Sunday finally arrived, it was no longer about if he'd play. It was about when it would become impossible not to. Game day in Cleveland has never felt like this. You'd think it was a playoff game. The streets outside the stadium were packed before sunrise. Tailgaters weren't talking about matchups or weather. They were talking about one thing. What's it gonna take for Shedeur to play today? Inside the stadium, the signs were everywhere, literally. Handmade posters, Sanders jerseys on fans of all ages, chants echoing from the upper deck hours before kickoff. We want Shedeur, but here's the kicker. He wasn't even starting. Joe Flacco was still QB1. Stfansky hadn't flinched. But that didn't matter to the 65,000 plus in attendance. The crowd didn't care who was on the depth chart. They believed they'd already seen enough, and they were desperate to see more. Then came warm-ups, and everything turned into a spectacle. TV cameras locked onto Sanders from the moment he stepped on the field. His passes were tracked like stock prices. Slow-motion breakdowns of his footwork, his throws, even his handshake lines with teammates were posted on social media in real time. And every time his face showed on the Jumbotron, the stadium erupted. People weren't just watching, they were hoping. Hoping for a reason. Hoping for something to finally believe in. For a fan base beaten down over the years by QB failures, bad drafts, and dashed expectations, Shedeur Sanders represented something they hadn't felt in years: possibility. Even with Flacco warming up as the starter, all eyes were locked in one direction, and it wasn't the veteran under center. Fans kept asking, what would it take? An injury? A scar deficit? Just one stalled drive? Anything could crack the door open. And every incomplete pass, every run stuffed at the line only made the chants louder. You could hear it shift. You could feel it. This wasn't just love for an underdog. It was a fan base begging for belief. What makes it even crazier? Sanders never said a word. He didn't campaign, he didn't pout. He went about his pregame routine like he always did. Calm, surgical, focused. But even in silence, his presence was commanding the entire moment. Cleveland hadn't seen this kind of energy in decades. Not for a playoff push, not for a coaching change, not even for hometown heroes. This was different. This was cultural. Whether or not he played that day didn't even matter anymore. Something irreversible had already happened. Shedeur Sanders had changed the temperature in Cleveland. And suddenly, the organization wasn't managing a rookie quarterback. They were managing a phenomenon. For most rookies, legacy isn't something people talk about in year one. It's earned over time, through stats, wins, and rings. But with Shedeur Sanders, the conversation started before he even took the field. Because what happened in the weeks leading up to Detroit, in the locker room, on social media, in living rooms across Cleveland, wasn't just hype. It was a shift in identity, not just for one player, but for an entire franchise. And whether he took a single snap that Sunday or not, he had already done the impossible. He'd made people believe the Browns might finally have found their guy. This was bigger than just a quarterback battle. It was a battle of vision, old versus new, safe versus electric, experience versus momentum. Coaches were preaching patience. Analysts were urging caution. But fans, they weren't asking for perfection. They were asking for a spark, and Sanders had already ignited it. His viral celebration against Green Bay wasn't just a flash of personality. It was a flashpoint moment. The crowd reaction, the electricity, the instant cultural buzz. It felt like watching a star form in real time. You don't get those moments often in the league. Maybe once a generation if you're lucky. And the Browns, a franchise known more for heartbreak than highlight reels, felt it happening. Veteran players, even those who bled for this organization, began using a different tone when speaking about Sanders. They used words like ready, leader, mature, and most importantly, different. And that's the heart of the Shedeur Sanders phenomenon. He doesn't just fill a position. He fills a void, one the Browns have been searching for since they re-entered the NFL. Whether or not he was ready for the pressure didn't seem to matter. Because the pressure was already here. And Sanders, he looked unbothered. Every moment leading up to kickoff fueled the legend. From the full stadium in warm-ups, to the sideline glances, to the chants growing louder by the quarter. This wasn't just a player waiting for a chance. This was a movement waiting for its moment. And that's why this wasn't about one game. It was about what comes next. Because the Browns weren't just holding a football decision in their hands anymore, they were holding a cultural one. And however they chose to move forward, one thing was now absolutely certain. The Shedeur Sanders era had already begun. Shedeur Sanders hasn't thrown a single touchdown in a regular season NFL game, and yet he's already changed the Cleveland Browns forever. That might sound dramatic, but ask anyone who's watched this story unfold. The buzz, the belief, the unity he injected into a city that's lived through 2 decades of quarterback heartbreak. No stat sheet can track what that's worth. Shedeur represents more than just a promising rookie. He's become a symbol of hope. And in Cleveland, that's a rare and powerful thing. For years, Browns fans have endured recycled veteran signings, bad draft picks, and false dawns that ended in disaster. They've been burned so many times that maybe next year became more of a coping mechanism than a belief. But now, with Shedeur on the roster, even just as a backup, people are leaning forward again, paying attention, believing, and the NFL has taken notice. Front office execs, coaches, players, analysts, everyone is watching how Cleveland handles this moment because it matters. This isn't just a team evaluating a quarterback. It's a franchise being called to define its identity. Will they play it safe and stick with what's familiar? Or will they take a calculated leap into the unknown, one powered by energy, chemistry, and momentum? We've seen this story before, young quarterbacks capturing the heart of a city before ever being officially handed the reins. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it crashes and burns. But when it works, it becomes legend. What makes Shedeur different isn't just the spotlight or the famous last name. It's how everyone around him responds to it. He hasn't cracked under pressure. He's embraced it. He hasn't bought into his own hype. He's outworking it. And that's what makes his journey so compelling. Because in a league full of polished talent and forced PR spins, what Shedeur brings to Cleveland feels raw, real, unscripted, authentic. The kind of thing you can't fake and can't replicate. So, while no one knows exactly what comes next, one thing is clear. The Browns didn't just draft a quarterback. They drafted a spark. Whether that spark becomes a bonfire or burns out under the weight of mismanagement is still unwritten. But in a city that's waited over 20 years for someone to believe in, Shedeur Sanders has already given them something they haven't had in a long time. A reason to care, a reason to hope, and maybe, just maybe, a reason to believe that this time, things really could be different.